Marauders binding 616 mail belt. Cheaper than on PST. Levi says, and can keep Cider me around to set things to previous states as needed for old quests. Elathiro says, I'm sure it's coming after the third X back in the cycle. Kinaran says, I'd settle for a graphical overhaul for SW and org. Like don't change the layout, just a new coat of paint. Kessler says. Craven says, and honestly with Classic being a thing they should bring back the old world to level in with Chromie time. UI says, Nap, new layout. Bigger cities. Expand them. Stormwind sewer system, new Supermax raid in the city. Orgrimmer refurbishes that massive complex beneath it. Endron says, yeah I hate how Classic is tied to Kata and Chromie. Craven says, I want to play Classic era quests but hate Classic gameplay so much XD. Werowai says, the Knights of Duskfall we are a newly formed guild dedicated to protecting those across Azeroth. If you wish to join we would be happy to have you. Jomar says, make Mechagon like an underground night city. Radcliffe says, WTS lurking marauders binding 616 mail belt. PST. Endron says, I want the other main cities useful again. I miss if. Jomar says, I saw a video that I think it was from Epsilon someone had made a Macedonian megacity it was dope. Craven says, if they made a gnomish/goblin night city I might actually like those two races again. Levi says, you know, a long while back, I recommended that Stratholm be made into a new capital for the Forsaken. Jomar says, gnomes have Mechagon since in lore a fleshy gnome is king of all humanity. Jomar says, but it's not flesh into UT at all beyond that instance version you can walk around in. Craven says, I think they should take over the burned husk of the tree so humans can have Lord Iron back. Endron says, that'd be awesome, but I can hear the horde screeching on the forums already. Jomar says, human deserve every bit of Lord Ian back. I mean I don't want to sound like a bad guy but undeath takes second seat to the needs of the living mortal. Craven says, man, anyone else getting random DCS? My internet is fine, but it keeps desync. Endron says, I wish the destruction from the Cataclysm was fixed already. Why is Booty Bay still wrecked? Eli says, well, that's why I think Stratholme needs to be fixed up and refurbished to reflect the current Forsaken goal of reintegrating with people, reuniting with their living families and such, and for the Lightforged undead. Jomar says, I want a clean human/dwarf/gnome sweep from the borders FO the Ghostlands to the cave to Booty Bay. Jomar says, I get them sometime, Craven. Crip says, internet is fine, keeps sync. Mordith says, only when I DC. Pacific says, depends if it's a DC or game window freezing. DCS generally happen when you land/fly and click on something. Fulruin says, Valkyrie master of all, able to craft everything. Weapons, armor, jewelry, crests, profession tools and everything in between. PST for details. Ariara says, is it more profitable to sell raw ore or to smelt it and then sell it? Craven says, depends on the ore, Arya. Ariara says, okay, right on. Craven says, look up the prices on the A and go from there. Flopple says, compare the ore price vs the bar price on the A. Mamayak says, Joel crafting tailoring T3 crafter. All JC next /ring R5 guarantee 2k com. All PvP gear and all concentrated LFW PST. Love. Endron says, a lot of the raw ore prices crashed this past week. Endron says, especially bismuth. Zolpokin says, when does season 2 begins? AppGX says, tomorrow. Eli says, think about it. Stratholme, rising from the ashes to be a bastion of unity for the Forsaken and the rest of the world, acting as a new capital for the kingdom of Lord Aaron as a whole. Flopple says, probably late Feb or early March. Haplodophobia says, when Undermine comes out. Endron says, yeah, probably Feb at least. Nif says, yeah, unfortunately, we got a ways to go before S2 drops LOL. Zolpokin says, thanks, I'll buy PvP gear then. Nif says, aye, this is the way LOL. Adestus says, I want Blizzard to make more good glyphs. Redcliffe says, LFJC for Amulet of Earthen Craftsmanship PST. Ari says, I ended my walk on Waterglyph as a priest. Myth says, I just got back into it, got attuned to 80 and trying to figure out the best way to gear LOL. Endron says, yeah, there's so much missed potential in cosmetic glyphs. Endron says, DH still doesn't have any LMAO. UI says, honestly, I want more glyphs in general. Tie them to new customization options at the shop. For instance,
Helisera has come online.
Adesta says, like Rogue only has 4. Sulkulkin says, imagine a glyph that makes your mirror images copy your emotes. Number $% you, Blizzard. Endron says, I meant Evoker asterisk. Nith says, they got the different wings for glyphs now. Get what you mean though, they could do a lot more for most classes. Adesta says, Evoker has none. Airlion says, Rogue needs an outlaw glyph to make the pistol about. Alvalriel says, Guild, Covenant of Elune is a small RPPV guild that is seeking role players to start new events, without the elitist vibes and the in-game racism. Welcomes all classes / races. Fight in Elune's name today. Nick says, I feel like Evoker should have one to stay out of dragon form or something. Relatively says, I wish. Elias March says, lizard form. Ori says, Evoker is just a ton of missed potential ammo, they really don't feel like the ones chosen by the Aspects ammo. Heartwing says, I just want a glyph that lets me change swapping to slash from visage anything but red smoke. UI says, imagine customization tabs for millions of characters like Death Knights. Customize your ghoul with new Shadowlands variants, Maldropsian reinforcements, or even Mawlike animated armors. Relatively says, also, I want to be a dwarf in my visage. Endron says, Evoker should have glyphs to change the color of some of their spells, give me green fire or something. Tenby says, Santa-shaped Kit Kats taste better I swear. Fulruin says, Algary master of all able to craft everything. Weapons, armor, jewelry, crests, profession tools and everything in between. PST for details. Alayolian says, free with Matt's Algary treatise on alchemy, Algary treatise on enchanting, Algary treatise on tailoring, Algary treatise on jewel crafting, etc. Get yours now. PC reset is Tom. Aplodophobia says, does ANY1 play with ray tracing on? Endron says, I did. I really didn't see a difference. Adesta says, there's a lot of stuff that would be good as glyphs, but that would require creativity from this small indie company. UI says, spell color glyphs, yes. And you know what? Since Blizzard loves tying things to grinds, let's blend those glyphs with content. Only instead of rotten RNG and impossibly long grinds to get the fun stuff, it's more akin to Darkmoon fair prizes. Heartwink says, also Drakthar are missing 80% of combat sounds on non-evoker characters RN, and asterisk, at glyphs most of the race doesn't even work right now. Relatively says, that's whack. Endron says, I just want to play as a Murloc guys. UI says, there are toys for that. Adesta says, I want to be a Haramir. Ori says, I'm just happy I can RP as D&D Kobold TBH. Endron says, no, I mean full on Murloc. Murloc feral druid form, swordfish. Adesta says, with legs. Endron says, exactly. Miss Mossy says, over anything else. UI says, we're not getting Murlocs as a playable race. Rogueworm says, I am an ILBL 631 Death Knight. Adesta says, ogre suck. Endron says, let me dream mate. Culturon mails are the same model. UI says, not on this I won't, but it may be implementable in other ways. Adestus says, I think we're gonna get Aronir by the end of the expansion, and a rotty years for humans and elves. Faranarian says, Aronir may come after Undermined. Airline says, Arati year's next patch. Hatefully says, Trade, can you rate my PvP set and tell me if it matches outfit? Adestus says, can we get Fat Gallywix goblins too? Levi says, I believe in customization and fun, but I also respect rules and realistic limitations. For instance, having a Murloc as a full playable race? Not gonna happen. However, adding some variety to druid forms, such as more accurate beast variants, and toys. Levi says, that allow you to look like a Murloc or even customize a personal Murloc form. Way easier to do. Fulruin says, Algary master of all able to craft everything. Weapons, armor, jewelry crests, profession tools and everything in between. PST for details. Airline says, what's with the hat? Teddy Bonker says, remove the weapon enchantment, it's solid. Gojo says, outfit trade, rate my fit. Airline says, are there any two-handed weapons that sheath on the hip? Gojo says, ignore the illusion. Diglin says, abysmal. AML says, 2/10. Levi says, it is easier to allow people customization options that can make RP fun, than it is to change fundamental game aspects to cater to small fringe groups that want some of the more wacky races. But that is, again, worthless, customization options. Levi says, and toys can come in to fill the gaps. Ashlyn says, WTB Plan Messenger run. Adestus says, outfit. Adestus says, green on red. Says, outfit. Diblin says, Frenzy Heart Group RP. Levi says, can tie these to expansion of smaller world events, as well. Radcliffe says, WTS Lurking Marauders Binding, 616 mail belt. Cheaper than OPST.
You have been inactive for some time and will be logged out of the game. If you wish to remain logged in, hit the cancel button.
Iofiscus says, Jewel Crafting Iofiscus Clinic, Max Ring / Nex, Binding of Binding, Ring of Earth and Craftsmanship, and PvP.
You have been inactive for some time and will be logged out of the game. If you wish to remain logged in, hit the cancel button. Unknown macro option, SPUF. Loot specialization set to, bullet.
Trazer says, I'm trying to make it work right now and it can actually be okay in some scenarios. Hardwink says, Firestorm needs way too much talent point investment for the smallest, saddest increase ever. Maleficent Emerald Dream flexes it forfeits. But who's so strong? Slippy says, WTC Ring of Earth and Craftsmanship at 636 PST will tip. Trazer says, it does need too many points. Hardwink says, Scorching Embers does what Firestorm wishes it could LMAO. Lunel says, OMG I actually logged in and Underwear isn't spamming trade channel for attention, I should go play the lottery. Trazer says, but if the tank pulls more than 5 at a time I can actually do some real damage. Trazer says, and keeps them close together. And doesn't move. Terry says, LFW Blacksmithing Max all plate armor and maces slash shield slash axes slash sword slash dagger slash blade slash fist weapon smith, have all PvP recipes.
You are now away, AFK.
Shieldheart says, what's the best way to get Valor Stones? Silk says, LFS harpies to alienation presurize Zeta craft. Ralphian says, if you haven't collected your rep rewards, that's a nice little chunk. Tenderlin says, yeah, he collected. Shadowweld says, trade for PvP with a taste of PvE when I'm feeling saucy would you suggest an Arms Warrior or an Outlaw Rogue? Trazer says, Legs Warrior. Enile says, Furry Fury Warrior. Fear says, Guild, deities and demigods want to wake up with coffee and guildmates on Discord but even in-game during the work week. Our server is aggressively entertaining. Kind mature grown-ups only 24 plus. Spisporky bursts into dance. Rockman says, 24. Palinopsia says, WTS Heavy Jump Box 122. Speedstick says, Prov the age of the youngest in their TBH. Positive says, people in chat sure get angry when you stop playing. Palinopsia says, WTS Heavy Jump Box 122. Positive says, but just always read when sit there form vs rosh slash SPRI slash ross so no point anyways. Spisporky says, shouldn't quit in PvP, if you queue finish it even if you lose. Pacific says, then they should've let me win a couple X3D. Pacific says, instead of going me every round. Spisporky says, slash sharp losing is too hard, stop it. Speedstick says, just stealth and hide and make the match as long as Pio's cycle. Awood Diaries STD says, WTS Hate Forge plays cycle PST. Positive says, SPO is one of those people that hide profile. Harold Breccia yells, the theater troupe is performing soon. Visit the proscenium outside Flammable. Sporty says, IPVP, should have 500 honor level in a month for free. I have bloodthirsty. Razor says, I found a piece of gear with resists elemental raiment. Positive says, Zero Arena ever played their Sporty. Why is that? Aywood Diaries STD says, WTS Hate Forged plays Cycle PST. Bohemkiss says, any idea why member's shirt doesn't show up as a t-shirt when I mock it? Sporty says, yeah, no rated. If rated makes you unhappy, Q random / epics, but you should finish what use Q for. Bohemkiss says, it's always sleeveless. Pacific says, you can AFK to honor for level 1500. Raven says, it's a guild shirt, changes based on your guild. Sporty says, that is dishonorable. Pacific says, no one even will know. Kitty Dan says, you play Alliance, there is no honor. Craven says, there are non-guild variants you can buy though. Rogueone says, horses are sexy. Kitty Dan says, I yield. Austin says, listen. I need someone to make me some black tux pants. I ain't paying $14,000 at the AUC. Sporty says, I would know. If you queue for it, finish it. Don't stop playing. We have had to look at the forum posts for people that quit. It gets old. If you can't finish it, don't queue it. Jaren says, looking for crafter to craft me artisan sickle.
You are the longer one.
Positive says, people also say that in BGS you already have full gear since no brackets, since BGS are for gearing. BGS are mostly pre-made BS none anyways.
You are now busy. I'm live on Twitch. https://twitch.tv/jadnburn.
Jaden Burn says, Jaden Burn and live Twitch and YT listen to my new album in any music app, smiley face, guild, e-girl for rent. Jaden Burn says, how much gold do you tip the owner of the Traders Guild at Brutusor for the privilege of interacting with the lovely male courier Melanie Morgan, FF? You burst into dance. Airline says, A/Spitzworth. Pacific says, may seem silly but I /is more people on the Bruno. Speedstick says, I'm so disappointed they took the /spit/fart emotes away from Focus Tunes. Sporty says, Gene BGS with full gear is fine. It actually makes for some good games. Perplexes says, the Evening Star Coven is seeking role players interested in long-term D20 style RP as well as AOTC level DPS and healers to join us in Tuesday raids and Saturday adventures. Interested travelers or mercenaries should contact Coven Keeper, PST. Femtex says, just slash point the slash spit. Spisporky says, that said spas here and just leveled and seriously under deer. So time to queue. Pacific says, if BGS had held low brackets, but they don't. Get people on your team with PvE gear and such. Boomer Furry says, how do I get women to join my vent channel? Spisporky says, BGS can be pretty chaotic and then there are premates which can flow stomp. Slash shark is what it is. Mangdok says, vent. What gear is it? Arthur Aaron says, don't use vent. Ashlyn says, cool. Ashes to Embers community-based guild searching active players both in-game and on Discord. Raid Tuesday and with 7:30 PM to 10:30 PM CST. Need DPS and heals. Our druid slash H poly. For raid team. Femtex says, I use Mumble. Bremen says, vent what gear is IT? We asked for the 10 millionth time after someone brings up vent.
Healing Sarah has gone offline.
Spisporky says, use telepathy boomer. Mangdok says, hey, I just got here. No need to blow up. Perplexes says, the Evening Star Coven is seeking role players interested in long-term D20 style RP as well as AOTC level DPS and healers to join us in Tuesday raids and Saturday adventures. Interested travelers or mercenaries should contact Coven Keeper, PST. Femtex says, telepathy. What are you from the Silent Generation? Hulet says, ye got a Hero Void Reaper's contract. Boomer Furry says, I haven't trained in telepathy. I put all my points into using Mangdok says, also I could have said vent. That's SUS but decided against it. Spisporky says, LOL remember that dude who would come here and bring up their Vevist and go on and about lucid dreaming? Boomer Furry says, LOL. Mangdok says, well, off I go to do some fishing. Later trade chat. Boomer says, good luck. Spisporky says, get on it May. Someone how I managed to max level 3 tunes and finishing. Mangdok says, thanks Furry. Femtex says, we in an airport. Boomer Furry says, outfit rate my drip. Spisporky says, fishing after it. That's my ticket. Darling Mickey says, hot. Zendria says, it's a lot. Han says, 7/10's not enough link.
You are no longer marked busy. You are now away, AFK.
Stella Parker says, 9 out of 10 Boomer Furry. Gojo says, easy. Spisporky says, Boomer does have some very good mods. But they only rarely share them for some reason. Nith says, needs more boom, 9/11s. KPZ says, outfit. Zendria says, I really like that KPZ. Boomer Furry says, most people don't understand high fashion. Airline says, outfit. Spisporky says, LOL bummer. Boomer Furry says, outfit rate Madrid. Nick says, outfit I seek the folding lamp brothers. Evelyn says, 12 tenths, immaculate drip sir slash ma'am. Moiseleg says, where is that helmet from Nith? Nith says, a heroic vault. Moiseleg says, Vault of Incarn. Nith says, Gaze of the Living Quarry. Cynic says, LFJC Hazalgar Jewel Crafting, Valkyrie Competitors Emulate. Nith says, that's the one. Zendria says, outfit, let's see if you know your mods or not. Zendria says, K-pop. Tell me later. Cynic says, LFJC Hazalgar Jewel Crafting, Valkyrie Competitors Amulet. Beacon Ribble says, fresh new RP PvP guild, Gridlink Sky Pirates, is looking for players for rated BGs, RP events, M+, and when they rated enough interest plus prizes in the future. Boomer Furry says, what is the Drakthur class called? Boomer Furry says, is it just Drakthur? Rogue One says, Evoker. Beacon Ribble says, Evoker. Billy Share says, outfit. Murder Mitten says, outfit. Speedstick says, outfits look best on Culty bronze. Myth says, all the Fae coming out to rock the Casbah. Murder Mitten says, the Sea Girls and Bois. Speedstick says, large livers. Cynic says, LFJC Hazalgar Jewel Crafting, Valkyrie Competitors Amulet. Myth says, outfit. Genexy says, outfit. Murder Mitten says, mine is a Void Elf sub. Jake Rolling Wall says, outfit. Murder Mitten says, I change my mod like every couple days. It says, totes get that. Elvis Barksley says, outfit. Bullet says, mine's too good and now I'm stuck. Boomer Furry says, outfit raise my drip. Cynic says, LFJC Hazalgar Jewel Crafting, Valkyrie Competitors Amulet. Galaxy Lord says, Valkyrie master of all able to craft everything. Weapons, armor, jewelry, crests, profession tools, and everything in between. PST for details. It says, Green Bean Machine, 7.5/10 needs even more green. Paisley says, is there a way to refresh transmogs without having to trek back to a city or using one of the mounts? Pirate Life says, Boomer very nice. Pirate Life says, real nice. Elvis Foxley says, Boomer, can I get a bell yet? Alan Burke says, Boomer Furry isn't even in the Boomer age demographic. Boomer Furry says, isn't there a toy that lets you mock? Bullet says, it's like a different non-cal green mostly. Alan Burke says, more like Fire Furry. Bullet says, yeah. Pearson says, what class has the fewest buttons at 80 ATM? Praxis says, Arms War. Galavic says, I'd assume the one we're on. The Darnellary says, RET. Boomer Furry says, Arcane Mage. The Darnellary says, RET or MM. Bullet says, Imperial Transmogrifier.
Team Sarah has come online.
Pirate Life says, how about this one? Outfit. Praxis says, can you enchant crafted weapons on that? It says, RET is honestly one of the easiest 2-button classes. Like I don't even fill my bar if you got macros, it's like 3 to 4 buttons. Elvis Foxley says, the transmog should be a felony. Laura says, even cracks yes. Elvis Foxley says, 10/10. Praxis says, off, tie. Boomer Furry says, playing RET in VR would probably make you run. Laura says, RET is easier than some classes from vanilla. Henria says, you can have embellishments on crafter weapons which are super powerful and then enchants also. Pirate Life says, LOL Elvis Barksley that was good. Pirate Life says, tie. Laura says, truly remarkable what Blizzard has done with the spec. Kitty Dan says, I would throw up playing DH in VR. Fjorgen says, trying to come up with a suggestion to someone that's overwhelmed by the amount of abilities in a MMO. Boomer Furry says, LOL. Galavic says, oh just tell them to play BM then. Murder Mitten says, BM bis. Alan Burke says, Devoker would be great if you feel overwhelmed, low number of buttons and lowest APM. Elvis Barksley says, I mean most classes don't use every ability unless you're p***ing. Fjorgen says, I'm at a loss because all I really play is Prop Pally or RET. Fjorgen says, LOL. Nit says, output all purple DH goes hard. Zendria says, see my crafter weapon? Valkyrie competitor staff an embellishment and an enchant. Elvis Barksley says, tell them to play off, laughing face. Big Fungus says, enchanted wing harbinger crest on public. Bullet says, the only ability I don't use every dungeon is charm woodland creature. Moiseleg says, RET/BM easiest rotations. Tenderlin says, guild, e-collective. Pirate Life says, damn Nith that's awesome. Nith says, tie. Kit Swear says, Dev is a great option, like Palink said, low APM and buttons. Great utility once they are comfortable and want to start exploring the other buttons. Fat Pete says, RET gotta be the easiest spec in game ATM. Jandalinia says, Bullet you better be charming all the woodland creatures in dungeons. Fjorgen says, I didn't think about APM, that's a good angle, thanks. Eros says, RET's fun AF. Eros says, LOL. Snowflake says, LF Everforged Sabatons R5. Fjorgen says, it is. Kateri says, LFW Blacksmithing Max all plate armor and maces /shield /axes /sword /dagger /blade /fist weapons smith, have all PvP recipes. Memnick says, where do the level 11 Fury Warriors get their socket gear for twinks and time walking? Bullet says, the developer is easy to get attached to, cool animations. Ensei says, RET feels like the same 3 buttons. Elvis Barksley says, I heard Shaman is the easiest to learn. Laura says, TBC dungeons. Moiseleg says, enhanced Shaman easiest rotation all time. Ensei says, I play survival before you come for my neck. Boomer Furry says, RET was the most fun in Kata. Craven says, depends on the shaman spec. Fjorgen says, I've never not liked RET. Wosky says, hey guys, I've been away for about this entire spec. Galabik says, all hunter specs are cheesy. Zendria says, Riso Shaman is probably the easiest PvE healer to get okay, hard to master. Kisware says, plus not playing in melee so they won't have the animations in ground effect overload. Ingot says, I like to spin. Wosky says, has trade chat changed any? Fjorgen says, define changed? How is it? Speedstick says, I mained hunter for 18 years. Now I see why everyone hates hunters. Elvis Barksley says, did melee range really get nerfed this spec? Boomer Furry says, why would it change? Ejaden says, that's not very long TBH. Hoolit says, we've all grown older and wiser since you last checked in. Ailelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Kisware says, yes the melee nerf was this spec. Orbit says, Resto Shamans I see just never use the full utility of the class, they never use Earthbind Totem. Kisware says, range. Fat Pete says, Havoc DH went from least amount of buttons to press to most amount LMAO. Roadworm says, I'm doing more damage as Blood Tank than Frost. Hoolit says, honestly using every totem well is kinda hard. Wosky says, oh my god they nerfed people who deserved it. Can't imagine people took that very well. Hoolit says, there are so many of them. Craven says, Warrior will always be my main, but I'm challenging myself to level all classes to max, except Evoker as I refuse to play as Scaly. Speedstick says, I face roll on Frost DK and still do number % damage. It's how to play bad I guess. Frostifix says, love healers and shuffle that blame you then they lose to you. Zendria says, yes in PvP blood is top arena DPS lol, until the huge nerf Tomaro. Suido says, LF enchanted gilded harbinger crest. Roadholm says, oh. Elvis Barksley says, RET pallies with the talent that gives you wings every time you use Ashes of the Wake as OP makes RET super easy to burst on. Roadholm says, me too. Wosky says, once you go Scaly you never go back, Craven. Craven says, Frost DK is annoying ATM as you need to do a breath build. Fjorgen says, I identify as a ranged DPS sincerely, me from about 15 to 20 yards away. Ziblin says, I hate breath build lol. Zendria says, blood DKs are currently broken in arena. They fixed Tomaru. Spartacus says, enchanted gilded harbinger crest public order up. Boomer Furry says, outfit raid my drip. Craven says, same, that's why I rarely play my DK now XD. Ailelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Meet 3. Wosky says, big knife / 10 Boomer Furry. Roadholm says, I just wanted to solo bosses. Zendria says, looks good. Big Fungus says, LF Ring of Earth and Craftsmanship 619. Fjorgen says, DK was my go-to-all, I detest the breath mechanic altogether. Fjorgen says, I played Unholy just so I didn't have to think about it. Craven says, Mythic BFDA will always be cool. Elvis Barksley says, yeah I miss just being to Howling Blast, and Obliterate with a 2H. Jandalinia says, I miss the good OL days when Frost was the tank spec. Malik says, LFERP guild. Hoolit says, yeah Frost tank was pretty cool. Malik says, LF guild. Brad says, dual will DPS blood. Brad says, Ryop. Mamayak says, Frost tank was way more fun than blood tank. Wosky says, Malik check farmer sunlight. Fjorgen says, I just don't think it's fun or thematic at all. Frost's theme to me was razor sharp icy weapons and huge crits. Craven says, I've always liked Frost but in the last 2 spots they really made breath mandatory. Boomer Furry says, oh the Frost tanking was the best. Wosky says, yes, that's a bad joke. Rondola says, LFBS Everforged Bam Braces 636 craft. Banatera says, Frost being the tank makes more sense than blood to me. I mean Isis synonymous with protection. Ziblin says, outfit not original but here's mine. Ailelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Meet 3. Hoolit says, I wouldn't even be envious if they let every DK spec tank and DPS again. Hoolit says, even if I miss Feral being DPS and tank. Revendor says, told you Murloc Horde troll. Myth says, spicy death knight shenanigans. Jandalinia says, Ziblin that mob is still dope. Craven says, DK should be overhauled to make Unholy into a necromancer. Fat Pete says, next class Blizzard has needs to be healer / tank specs only. Kisware says, oh that would be badass. Fat Pete says, we're lacking on tanks and healers. IIT Guy says, Frost tank is dumb. Isis hard isn't good justification. KZD says, oh did they undo Unholy's big necromancy lean? Hasn't played since Kata. Malik says, LF Guild. Revendor says, Fortune Tank. Altamina says, can someone message me? I am trying to come up with a gnome rogue name and have some ideas. Wasky says, you're right, I want Frost Mage Tank. Ingrid says, need a leg spec to match arms equals slash. Jorgen says, they did not, no, Unholy is still very heavily necromantic and disease based. Kano says, looking for a community to find friends for RP in all forms of WoW content but don't want to be tied down to a guild? Join the Pride of Azeroth Discord. LGBTQ friendly 18 plus server dedicated to just that. Whisper for more info. Ziglin says, warrior feat spec win. Hulet says, Unholy Tank makes possibly the most sense. Panos yells, looking for a community to find friends for RP in all forms of WoW content but don't want to be tied down to a guild? Join the Pride of Azeroth Discord. LGBTQ friendly 18 plus server dedicated to just that. Whisper for more info. Hulet says, and would be super cool. Revendor says, yes. Rom says, WTS Murigan's favor to 5k. Altamina says, Ziggle Linksum Sparking for Snap Tying Clip Sneak Sprout Fine Quilmadila Stab Frock Shank Soul Jar Riffle Twiddle Sprocket are my options. Help me narrow them down please. Revendor says, did they buff Frost? Craven says, it's more about putting dots on enemies than poking them, I want them to make it a caster spec. Alelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Me too. Subferami says, I like Riffle. Rom says, WTS Murigan's favor 30k. Craven says, Blade Caster would be sick. Alalian says, come get your Hazalgar inscription. Valkyrie treatise on alchemy Hazalgar inscription. Valkyrie treatise on enchanting Hazalgar inscription. Valkyrie treatise on blacksmithing Hazalgar inscription. Valkyrie treatise on engineering because reset is 2. It says, bring back Shockedin as DPS slash healer hybrid LOL. Boomer Furry says, the next class should be the Diablo 3 Witch Doctor. Nit says, man that was some fun crazy stuff back in WoW. Holy shock dude 30% of their health and heal people up randomly. Hardwink says, Woody had the best iteration of Shockedin ever in PvP. Snowflake says, LF ever forged Sabatons R5. Ejigan says, only if I can throw bags of spiders all over the place. Rom says, WTS Murigan's favor 30k. Suido says, LF ever forged longsword recraft. Craven says, imagine the bag of spiders with arachnophobia mode on, just caked in crabs. Ishmael says, WTS miners hat of the deep miners hat of the deep miners hat of the deep PST. Alelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Me too. Ejigan says, LOL. Boomer Furry says, crab rangoons aren't even that good. Hulet says, should we have had 3 sets of the refinery to turn in yet? Cinder says, crab rangoons are the good WTF. Bobo says, Guild, Benevolent Starlight. Lupi says, WTS Tabard of the Lightbringer 85k / captured Doom Scavenger 175k whisper me. 3. Subferami says, Max is still 7% here. Hulet says, okay Ty. Nit says, better off making your own rangoons, but do mozzarella cheese and pepperoni. Basically MVP pizza pockets. Dip in marinara or ranch. Sinpride says, I see Boomer's ban is up, welcome back. Hulet says, just 2 stacks makes such a big difference. Ablation says, enough on pocket. Ziglin says, how'd he get banned? Malik says, LF Guild. Nit says, he was booming in Maduma here. Sylphine says, aw damn he is back. Hulet says, crab rangoon is just one of those Thai dishes every Thai place falls back on. Boomer Furry says, WTFD, I wasn't banned. Wasky says, I ban you, NGL. Kayla says, he was just D. Spartacus says, LF. Ablation says, sad horns. Hulet says, like pad thai, usually it's not worth ordering and hard to know when it is. Boomer Furry says, I was just fuzzy playing the game of the year Dragon Age Guildguard. Pullet says, when in doubt go for Thai curry, no Thai places messes that up. Craven says, man I love Bellegarde TBH. Alelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Me too. Marticus says, MMM green curry. Warm Cuddle says, selling Violet Abyssal Nitrate Watcher 500 grams each. Spartacus says, LF one hand fist WEP 636 recraft. Arati says, finally 1800 in solo Berg's gotta say it's been awful. Sibilin says, never played Dragon Age, any good? Halo says, yes. Tulip says, first one is pretty awesome. Cinder says, your Thai places must suck. If it's a good Thai place, the crab rangoons and pad Thai should be the best things on the menu. Marticus says, Dragon Age 1 go 2 bad 3 math 4 great. Bullet says, like no need to get personal about it, I was just making generalizations about average Thai places. Soulai says, you did not call the new Dragon Age great and say 3 was met. Alelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Meet 1. Craven says, Dragon Age as a series is awesome, Bellegarde breaks a lot of lore but has wonderful gameplay. Marticus says, Inquisition was a single player MMO. Bullet says, I don't come into your Thai place and tell everyone it sucks. Marticus says, don't at me. Cinder says, you don't cause their rangoons and pad Thai are bomb. Bullet says, also I'm not a sociopath. Kimmy says, WTS Tabard of the Lightbringer 85k / captured Dune Scavenger 175k whisper me. 3. Craven says, Inquisition was odd as it was their first open world one. Alelia says, LF Charter 6 200 grams tip. In front of SW Guild office. Meet 1. IIT Guy says, shame that WG is the last of the series. Then the new Mass Effect will be the last game BioWare makes. Arati says, how's everyone doing today? Bardrenier says, WTS plans, sanctified steps 150k. Nith says, outfit red booty bandit R8 me. Sinpride says, good, watching planes, trains and automobiles with the guild. Renee Smee says, guild, good form. Adar Malaria says, guys I found a WA that puts the Latitus feed on your screen for the entire duration of Lust /Hero /TW. Craven says, well they hint to another at the end of Bellegarde. Bardrenier says, WTS plans, sanctified steps 150k. And Yasaltika says, Dragon Art 2 had the best art theme in aesthetics, and I will not apologize over it. Bullet says, yeah it was a good looking game. Boomer Furry says, I miss John Candy. How come Hollywood hasn't given us a good comedy movie?
You have been inactive for some time and will be logged out of the game. If you wish to remain logged in, hit the cancel button.
Craven says, just a shame about the lack of customization. Heiguchi says, the 2 best companions in party banter. Bardrenier says, WTS plans, sanctified steps 150k.
Unknown macro option, spuff. Police specialization set to, fully.
Forge Shield says, I drink Nestle and can't be bothered to care about any alleged wrongdoings. Jaden Burns says, how much gold do you tip the owner of the Traders Guild at Brutusor for the privilege of interacting with the lovely male courier Melanie Morton, FF? Craven says, I'm glad I don't like chocolate. So much suit avoided. You burst into dance. Forge Shield says, don't at me. Kiwi says, chocolate is going up in price big time soon y'all. It's another year bad crops so I've been stashing chocolate and coffee. Veteri says, LFW blacksmithing max all plate armor and maces slash shield slash axes slash sword slash dagger slash blade slash fist weapon smith. Have all PvP recipes. Kiwi says, coffee going up big time too. Jaden Burns says, y'all laughed at me when I said the Great E-Girl War is coming. Craven says, I hate chocolate and coffee. Favorite candy bar? Coffee Crisp. Kiwi says, gonna sell it later for a profit. Bullet says, it's only just after dinner. Do we have to doom already? Mama Yap says, long boy parade in the PvP area. Jaden Burns says, I ran, Jaden Burn 2024, yet here we are. Appalachian says, I did just finish dinner. Forge Shield says, imagine spending money on a mount. Selderong says, LF Pandaria Taylor, crafted PvP armor recipes. Kiwi says, use gold to gold is literally so easy to get. Forge Shield says, race changes 8 times. Jaden Burn says, starting number 1 kill the horde. 2 slay all the dragon, 3 bait all the druids of the Stormwind cesspool stank muskie. Leviate says, we pay us up, we are all paying for mounts. Appalachian says, we are. Kiwi says, this is a 100% free game if you make gold. Baranarian says, token bin on the offer MF3 HRS RIP. Craven says, I don't play the enough to warrant the $132 for the Pronto. Kish says, time is money so no it's not free at all. UK says, I never understood why people whine about people spending money on a game when they spend 500 hours wasting time on it. Dead Hey Tesma says, I will buy anything I want and I will buy anything I want for all my homies. Jaden Burns says, but if someone gifted me one ID be their pocket mercy main, winky face. Equal K says, time equals money. Kiwi says, sell mythic and carries it for good or play the if you don't like PvE. Easy 500k a day 3 hours work at that. Warm Cuddle says, do you flip a walk and elementals? Forge Shield says, I'm not in a WoW sweat dungeon making 5 cents an hour to multi-bot box herbs. Appalachian says, who only 7 dates on this tune. Kiwi says, and we're doing something you enjoy. Evil K says, it's just the concept of it. Craven says, I mean people spend a lot more to get the odd Pronto back in the day lol. Mama F says, Joel crafting tailoring T3 crafter. All JC next /ring R5 guarantee 2k com. All PvP gear and all concentrated LFW PST. Love. Evil K says, like if we really want to